eyes peeking through the blinds, a brand new day. Got the rhythm pumping in my chest, gonna chase the blues away. Woke up smiling, no doubt in my mind what I'm gonna do. Gonna step right out into the light and see my dreams come true.
Dr. Laurie Davis, aka the Recovery Mechanic, is the real deal. Straight talk, wisdom, rich content, and humor best describes her presence as a show host. Master educator, entrepreneur, author, and as an international professional speaker, she has made her mark in serving others from all walks of life. Get out your notepads, as Dr. Laurie always has something to say you will want to remember. From her meager beginnings with a business at the age of 12, her educational career, and for the past 40 years as an entrepreneur, Dr. Laurie's experience and ability to mentor others far exceed the norm. She holds an honorary doctorate in humanitarianism for her decades of work in the global communities. Broadcasting has been a professional passion since her first appearance on radio in 1998. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please join our host, Dr. Laurie Davis.
Peeking through the blinds, a brand new day.
Good afternoon. It is the afternoon. Welcome. Dr. Laurie here with my very special guest, Luciano Nisi, and I'm so glad to see you again and have you back on the show. It's been a while and there's been a lot going on, and just happy to be on the air all over the world this year, season 11 coming up. And right now, just for our viewers, we're streaming live on Laurie Davis Facebook page and also on my YouTube channel. And you just go into YouTube and search Laurie Davis Show Host. And if you go in, please subscribe and you can share the show from there. And that's the only thing we ask from our viewers. So good afternoon, Luciano. How are things in BC, beautiful British Columbia?
Well,
we've already talked about that.
Yeah, the weather's beautiful today. It's the rain is dissipated for the last couple of days here, so it's great. Very nice weather here, nice and temperate and not humid like some places in the country. We'll apologize a little bit. I'm just getting over a bit of a cold, so hopefully I won't sniffle too much on the air here. But yeah, and congratulations on season 11 with your show and your progress. So that's wonderful, and I really appreciate being invited back.
Well, thank you. I think we always find lots to talk about. So glad people weren't here the first half hour before we came on the air, because we had some pretty good chats about some things that we're concerned about. But anyway, Today we're here to talk about you. And congratulations to you also on achieving that commercial pilot's license, because I know you've been working on that for quite a long time, and that's terrific. So how does that feel?
Well, it's interesting. You know, it was a lot of work. I don't like the written exams very much. I find the way they're designed and the studying involved. So it took a little bit longer for me to get it back in. You know, I've been flying for, I think it's around 34 years now privately. And to go back basically to school for aviation when, you know, you just get up and do your thing. And a lot of this information you don't really need on a daily flight basis. So yeah, I had to go through the ground school and took a little bit extra time with that. And then there was a couple bumps in the road, but so I had to actually fly in the fall. So basically between September and January area. My flight test was delayed a few times due to weather. We had flooding in the Fraser Valley. So anyways, you know what, you just persevere, you push through, you get it done. And so it was quite a positive feeling, but it's kind of ironic, you know, once you go through all that process, you get something. It's almost anticlimactic, because it's like, okay, well, I achieved that now, which is awesome. I worked hard. Okay, so now what? What's next?
Now what?
So it's a bit of a problem that way, right? It's like,
yeah, you know, it's like the day after Christmas when we were kids, right? The next day, it was kind of like a little gift.
You're all excited to open the presents. You see them, and you get to play with them a bit, and then all of a sudden you're like,
yeah, where's Christmas? Well, you know, since we've talked, I've had a lot of expansion myself now, you know, working in a lot of different cultures as we speak. and many of my viewers don't really know anything about you. So why don't we just do a little highlight past career before we get into talking about your book?
Okay. Yeah.
Who is Luciano? Who is this guy?
Who is this guy? Yeah. So, yeah, I guess we'll without trying to draw this out too long, but when I was very young, I had this passion for military war movies, stories. Watched MASH, of course, as a
Oh yeah.
sitcom, but kind of fascinated me a little bit. And I used to read this comic, Sergeant Rock. This character that was in the Pacific battle. Actually, it wasn't really the standard European conflict. But anyways, used to go to surplus stores and smell the musty surplus gear and all that, and was always intrigued, but never seriously thought about getting in the military. But then all of a sudden, through various things I was doing, I was actually working part-time at the Coast Guard at the time, and I just decided at the age of 23, I was like, I'm going to join the Army. I don't know, let's do it. So I did that, and I spent 6 years in as a combat medic, and I did a tour overseas, and but I was going for a goal in search and rescue at the time in the military. It didn't work out, so I took my release after 6 years, and then bounced around with some other careers, lots of careers, unfortunately, I think, good or bad, because I've worked as an armored car guard, I've worked as a sheriff, I've worked as a border officer. I spent over 8 years in the Coast Guard as a rescue specialist diver. So just, yeah. And then the final career I did essentially was working as a paramedic full time, and I'm still licensed, but I don't work as a paramedic. I'm essentially retired from work, but I keep my license. I think maybe it's a bit of an identity thing for now until I decide to, finally not keep the credits up. And then, I just, for now, basically I enjoy, writing. I'm working on a couple other projects. With my commercial, I'm looking forward to maybe doing some private float instruction. I have some experience in that. And then I do some volunteer work at some of my aviation clubs and museums and things that are in the area, and give back a little bit that way. So yeah, I keep pretty busy otherwise. So that's it in a nutshell.
Well, I find sometimes on the back end of things, we're busier than when we work full time, right?
I'm never bored, that's for sure.
So initially you have written a book, and what's the title of your book? And let's talk a little bit about what inspired you to start there with your first book, because I know you have more coming, but the one that you and I've talked about in the past, the title, and what inspired you to write that book?
Yeah, so I wrote a couple smaller books, ebooks, before I wrote my paramedic stories book. One was when I worked as a border officer. I wrote a small book, sort of a guidebook called Crossing the Line: How to Cross a Land Border Stress-Free. And essentially that came about simply because I was still working as a paramedic part-time, but I was working as a border officer full-time. And every time I'd work as a paramedic, I would get bombarded by my partners of the day because they wanted to ask me questions about border stuff. I'm like, I said, I'm actually trying to get away from that and be here today and be, I got the stethoscope and I put the guns hanging up in the locker, and I got the stethoscope today. So I really don't want to talk about that. So I came up with that. I'd never written a book before, and it was fairly short. It's only like, I think 58 pages or something. But never really got that printed. It was just an ebook. And then I wrote another book called Trail Ready: How to Pack and Prepare for Hiking Emergencies. And that's, again, another small guidebook. I did get a limited amount of those printed, though, from a printer in Victoria, BC. But for the most part, it's an ebook. And it's just basically to give people some preparedness information about going for day hikes and things, because people don't go prepared. So it focuses on the 10 essentials that are, it's not something I invented and by any means, but I just put it together in sort of an easy to follow, concise guide for that. And then, so the paramedic stories, my Untold Stories of a Paramedic, True Stories of Life on the Job, came about because, of course, I do enjoy writing and I'm journaling and things. And we'd go to these calls, and I always thought, I wonder if people would enjoy reading a book about this, like the true calls that we did, like what's actually happening and unfolding, whether it be something serious, the traumatic stuff, or the funny, silly things. Like we used to literally say, nobody's going to believe that this happened, right? Some of the stuff that happened to us. So it kind of came about that, and I started keeping track of calls, just keeping notes, sometimes voice recording notes after my shift or what have you. And a lot of them are still also in the memory, right? You don't forget certain things. And so then I started writing that. I decided I wanted to share that. And again, my book is, a lot of people are, I think, concerned. They're like, oh, well, is it all kind of, trauma, guts, bad calls, bleeding, things like that? And I said, no, it's not. My book is, I would say, maybe 20% that, if that, I don't know. Other stuff is sort of on the humorous side, I think. There's still maybe some element of, obviously somebody's having an issue that day, but they're not, no one's dying in the story, we'll say, which of course does happen. But I had to include a combination. So I wanted to give a snapshot of what the job's about, not what, every time an ambulance goes screaming by with its siren going, it doesn't necessarily mean that is a serious call. It's just the way it's dispatched and the way it's been received. So that was what I was trying to depict with that book. And overall, I think it's been a positive. I've gotten positive feedback both from my colleagues and other people that have read it and enjoyed it. So yeah, overall, I think it's been a good experience. And right now I'm currently trying to get sorted out getting an audiobook for it, actually, and whether or not I record it myself or I use some AI type software to help me with that. There's some options. So I'm just looking at the best fit for that. And because I need a studio if I'm going to do it. I can't do it at home. I don't have a quiet enough place to record and the equipment. So yeah, so I think that's about the gist of that so far. But and again, working on some other books as well, obviously.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. So if someone wanted to order Untold Stories of a Paramedic, you're on Amazon, I assume, or?
Yeah, I'm on Amazon, Indigo. I mean, actually, it's quite surprising where my book's available, because sometimes I'll just Google my name to see where my books are and things like that. I mean, locally you can get them in Walmart. You can get them. There's people selling them on eBay. They're available all over the place, actually. But I'd say the main sort of more common ones would be Amazon and Indigo, things like that, and some other independent book sellers and things like that. But it's sold globally. I sell books in the UK and Australia. I can now see on my sales receipts where people are buying them. So it's always great. Always makes me smile when I see someone across the pond that's buying my book. So
yeah, well, let's talk a little bit about that, because I know that as a paramedic, can you share with us, were you a paramedic before, during, or after COVID? Let's talk a little bit about that, because I want to focus on right now. The province of Saskatchewan right now is 200 paramedics short. Okay, like short staffed by 200 people, first responders, paramedics, that whole group of people. So during your reign as a paramedic, how would you feel about sharing some things that you feel have changed, or can you do a comparison for us, when you were in the job compared to what might be going on right now with all the stresses on the medical system?
Yeah, so I mean, there's been I started working well before COVID, and then partially into COVID. I actually left, and it wasn't because of COVID. It was just essentially it was stress related. I was diagnosed in the military with PTSD a number of years prior to me leaving the ambulance service, which, by the way, I don't call it PTSD. I call it PTSI. I call it I is for injury versus a
Yes, disorder. I remembered you saying that. I love that.
Yeah, well, it's just I didn't really come up with it. Someone else did, and I really think it's a better fit because, I actually I had the military issued me a wound stripe, which is basically like similar to what the U.S. would call a Purple Heart for injury by hostile forces, and my injury was psychological, and they issued me a so. The military has recognized that it's an injury, so I just think the psychiatric community should probably consider retooling that a little bit because when you call anything a disorder and you group it in with things like schizophrenia and other disorders like that, that's where a lot of the stigmatism comes from, right? Where people, even today, it's much more accepted, we'll call it, to talk about that. It's still out there, and even within the service and stuff like that, and it has a detrimental effect on the person that's experienced it. Often they won't seek help. The suicide rate last year in the ambulance service was quite bad in BC. I think it was around close to 15 paramedics committed suicide.
Oh my goodness.
And that's a fairly small group of people for just BC, really. And related almost exclusively to job related stress, we'll call it. Anyways, so I left. But at the beginning when COVID started and it was still sort of in the unknown area before vaccines were out, and I'm not going to get into that politic thing about the vaccines because there's so much about that, whether we should have got them and shouldn't have. But so when we went into calls, we had to develop procedures on, and very similar to SARS though, and other diseases, right? So as medical personnel, when you're entering unknowns, you have to take certain precautions. And if you went in as the medic, so when you work on an ambulance crew, there's someone that drives the ambulance that day, and then someone that's attending. The person that's attending is the one that deals in the patient in the back, obviously, and the person that drives handles driving, stretchers, things like that. Pardon me. So what we would do is we had to put on a full Tyvek suit, an N95 mask, safety glasses, a shield, obviously gloved, and we would walk into a call with only a very, very small kit, actually, initially, and it would be a blood pressure cuff, a pulse ox, a thermometer, and we would do an initial assessment because more often than not, the people were displaying flu-like symptoms, right? So we had to decide whether or not that person's symptoms and signs and symptoms were severe enough to warrant going to a hospital or not. Now, we couldn't do a test to see if they had COVID or not at that time. There was no tests that we could do. They weren't available. But essentially, there was a number of times that we refused to transport people to the hospital because the hospital system was overloaded. And also there'd be a risk of someone potentially even getting COVID in the hospital. I mean, that's not what you want to hear, but there's always a chance, right, of cross-contamination. And so, I remember this one particular woman that called, she kept calling, right? So dispatch knew who she was, and we would go and assess her, but she got refused transport like 5 times, which in the past that would never happen. If you called an ambulance, no matter, you could walk, you could be barely nothing wrong with you, and we're going to take you to the hospital. Okay. That's just, we used to call it like a taxi service, honestly. Like that's how we felt because they didn't need us. They just needed a ride to the hospital, but they thought that they'd get in faster and all these things, which is a myth that's totally not true. I can't tell you how many times we've brought people in either walking or even on a stretcher sometimes, lowered the stretcher and placed them in the waiting room. Like that's just the way it is, right? So anybody that is watching this, don't think that calling an ambulance is going to get you in faster or in a bed faster, because it's not the way it works. You're still triaged. So yeah, it was a lot of unknowns back then. And I wouldn't say, like, as for myself, I wasn't really afraid of it, the virus. I don't know. We're exposed to things all the time. And, we try to take our precautions appropriately for our PPE, right? That we wear our gloves or our goggles or masks as appropriate, gowns if we need them. When other things were big in the news, like AIDS or whatever, we're dealing with blood products and body fluids, whatever it is. Like there's so many unknowns out there that, you just have to be cautious and and do your job the best you can. So I can just say I wasn't afraid of the virus at all, actually, even though I saw what was going on in the news and everything. I was like, well, we're doing our thing and we're doing the best we can. I did feel a little bit guilty when I left, actually, because I felt like I was leaving the service with one less experienced paramedic on the road. But at that time, I really wasn't very effective as a paramedic, emotionally and psychologically. So it was the right time to leave. But I did feel some guilt initially because I felt like I was letting the team down, right?
Right. Well, you have to take care of you.
Yeah, and that's important. Unfortunately, a lot of paramedics aren't doing that, and that's what has led them to, taking their life. Unfortunately, is they don't get help and they try to deal with it themselves or whatever, perhaps substance abuse, alcohol, what have you, and they get to the point that that's their answer, which is really sad.
Yes, a permanent answer to a temporary solution sometimes.
Yeah.
Not all the time, but sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
Well, I had my own trip in an ambulance since I saw you last.
Did you? Well,
I did, and I'd never been in an ambulance.
Oh.
Do they have shocks in those trucks? Like I went. Is there any suspension? Like, I mean, I'm in the back. I'm on my way to Red Deer to have. You'll never believe what happened. Do you want to? I just like.
Yeah, let's hear your ambulance story here.
Golly, gee, they were amazing.
Were they?
Paramedics were amazing.
Great.
And I had to anyway. I had cooked dinner for my neighbors and on a Sunday, and they were coming up the walkway, and I took this terrible pain in my guts. I thought, I can't even stand up. And I've never been sick really to speak of, and I don't take any medication, like I've been blessed.
Right.
So anyway, I said to my husband, I've got to get to the emergency, man, like right now. So I go to the wonderful emergency unit. I'll give them a plug, Drayton Valley, Alberta. Amazing people there. And anyway, you know what happened? My intestine. When I was 5, I had my appendix out.
Okay.
5.
Yeah, I had mine when I was younger as well, like in the
right?
About 10 or something. Yeah,
my intestine had attached itself to the scar tissue on that appendix scar. 70 years.
Wow.
And it got smaller and smaller, and finally it closed off.
So you had an obstruction. You had a bowel obstruction.
Big time.
Wow, that's bizarre.
I know. It took but all along I had like little digestive issues. I ate too much cheese, or that was too sweet.
Yeah.
But anyway, it took 70 years for that thing to close down.
So did you have to have surgery then?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Emergency
surgery, yeah.
They fixed it. Now I can eat everything. I can eat ice cream. I can.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
That's bizarre though, that you would never because you said, there's some minor things and we just put up with them because we think, well, we're not perfect machines, right? We're these meat suits walking around with all these weird things going on. So like, how can, you can't, what are you gonna get a body scan every year? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I have a philosophy. It's not broken, don't fix it, so I just I would adjust my diet or whatever, but I didn't have any idea that's what was going on. And I've never been really sick, so never would have been picked up at any point in time,
So to answer your question about that, it's very interesting because we've been in BC, at least for many years, we pushed the service to try to put air ride suspension in the ambulances.
Okay.
In the back. Because what a lot of people don't know, I also used to drive a tractor trailer years ago. It wasn't a career that I wanted, so I didn't do it. But my father had trucks, so I used to bring scrap steel to the States when I was like 19. But anyways, because of learning a little bit about the trucking industry, what a lot of people may or may not know is most trucks on the road, the tractor, which is the truck part of the load, right? The rear part of it where the wheels are, there's air ride suspension there. Okay. Most trailers that are carrying any kind of delicate products like eggs or whatever have air ride suspension on the trailers. to dampen vibrations and things. Now, the ambulance service claimed that the reason they wouldn't put air ride suspensions in the ambulance, because they are available for smaller vehicles like that, is because if an airbag blew, the ambulance would flip.
Oh,
But so
is that true? Or
well, if it happened, it could happen, maybe. But there's, first of all, you'd have to be going around a corner when it blew, because
yeah.
it's not going to, even if it blew when you're driving down the road, it's just going to, you're going to sink a bit. Okay. So first of all, secondly, tractor trailers are not flipping over on any kind of a basis because of airbags blowing. They just don't blow out. Okay. This isn't a thing.
Right.
So I think it was just a cost issue is all, because what we said you could actually have an adjustment on them, because you can actually add air to them or not, right? That's why they're air ride. They're adjustable. And you could have, say, have it on stiff when you're responding to the call. So it would give you the control to manage the vehicle. And then when you're transporting, even if you have the lights and siren going, when you're transporting an ambulance, you're transporting very smoothly. And, that's the way you're supposed to do it. But then you could put it in like soft mode and then give the patient a ride, because I've done lots of transfers between Vancouver, Chilliwack, say for an hour and a half. It doesn't matter how the driver drives. How they drive does make a difference as well, how they start and stop and things like that. It does make a difference, but there's only so much you can control. Mm-hmm. And you can't control the suspension itself. So, I think they're just cheap. That's what I think it comes down to. That's my theory, because they added up, and we always said they need to see. It was worse before. We used to put people in the back on backboards, right? On hard boards, which we stopped that practice probably almost 10 years ago. But people used to be strapped to a hard board. Now imagine being on a hard board going to a hospital after you've been in a car crash. Oh, and you can feel you could feel enough if you were on the back of the stretcher, which is padded, let alone on top of a hard board, right? So with a possible neck injury, we're saying, or whatever. So yeah, leaps and bounds changes in that. But yeah, I don't know if there is a service that actually has airbags in the ambulance. I'm thinking there might be, but I don't know where they are, so I can't say. But
well, they're definitely not in Alberta. I will tell you that.
You're not in BC either, so you're not. Yeah, not.
I thought, boy, I hope the surgery was a lot less painful.
Yeah, it's like, it's almost like, here, let's give you some Entonox or something to suck on while we're dealing with the bumps. But you're also asking about some changes in the service since, Yeah. So there's been a lot of very positive changes. The medical director that's been in charge of the ambulance service a couple of years ago, and this is after I even left, has increased the scope of practice for primary care paramedics, which is the sort of the regular paramedics. Then you have your advanced life support, right? So you have your two sort of tiers typically. Okay. And then you have the air flight ones, which are on helicopters, which are critical care. So and then you have an EMR level too, which is slightly less than the primary care. So there's essentially 4 levels of paramedic. But we'll stick with the PCP, the primary care paramedic ones. Their scope of practice has changed so much, it blows my mind, because I've done the CME updates. Even things like they can give steroids by IV, they can give acetaminophen by IV, which I didn't even know was a thing. The only failing right now, which is still ongoing, and it's been ongoing since the beginning of service, is at the PCP level, there isn't a proper pain control measurement to control pain. So we have Entonox, which is a gas. Many people know laughing gas, used in pregnancies, used for fractures, things like that. It can be very effective for those things. They brought in another drug called Penthrox, which is it was used more in Europe and in England. I think they used it. But the problem with it is if the person administering it can breathe it in, there can be side effects to them. So even if it's in a ventilated ambulance, apparently there was some issues. I've talked to paramedics that said they never had an issue. So I'm not sure if that's more for moderate pain. It's self-administered by the patient. They basically suck on this gas that they breathe in, similar to Entonox, but a little more effective. And then we had a ketamine trial, which I was actually part of before I left the service in Surrey. And ketamine was intranasal. That's a brilliant drug. That's been around since World War II. It's safe for children. It's brilliant, and it will. I think a guy had kidney stones that I picked up. And when we did the trial, you have to understand it was a double blind trial. So we didn't know if the medication was in the packet or not, right? Like it was a blind study. So it's
Oh, okay.
the way they have to do it. So every time I'd give it, I'd be like, okay, I hope I'm giving the drug because this person needs it.
Right.
And it didn't always be that case. Sometimes they didn't. Probably 50% of the time they were getting saline.
Mhm.
But this one particular gentleman, I remember administering it to, and we had him on the stretcher. And my partner, who was attending, was not endorsed to give the drug because they hadn't gone through the training. So, but I could administer it and then load the patient, and then I was going to drive the person to the hospital. So this gentleman was like 10 out of 10 plus, buckling over in pain. I actually thought he had kidney stones, because kidney stones, from what I've seen from patients, is one of the worst pains I've seen people experience. I've never had it, but from seeing patients that have had it, like they're like, okay, and so I gave him the 2 shots. You give a partial dose in each nostril. That we loaded him up into the ambulance. So it's from the time that I gave him the dose, we loaded him up in the ambulance stretcher locked in. And I think, well, whatever that takes, within a minute, he literally went unconscious. And I said to my partner, I said, he's unconscious. I said, like literally, I said, check his pulse, because this has happened. I've actually had people arrest on me, like just sitting there. Okay. So this is a thing that can happen. I thought, okay, oh my God, like check his pulse. And she jumped back in and checked the pulse. And of course he had a pulse, and then he came to, and I said, how you doing? He goes, I have no pain.
Wow.
Like just like that. So, but the unfortunate thing is, and I'm not working the service anymore, and I don't know why, but they still don't have it distributed amongst all the paramedics in BC. There's a few remote stations that have it. They said it's a care and control issue with the safes and all that, but they have biometric safes in every station because the advanced life support have morphine and some other drugs they keep in there. So there's a care and control, dual custody, just like hospitals, you have to double sign for things and all that. But anyways, they always claim it's a control issue, and that's why it's not in the ambulance. So I don't know why they just don't give PCPs morphine, because we have the antidote. Narcan is an antidote. It's that's what it does. It's a opiate antagonist, so it will reverse morphine. If someone say has an allergic reaction that they don't know about, we can give Narcan, which every paramedic has, and we can reverse it. So I've never understood why they just don't allow PCPs to give morphine for pain. Because we need something. We're still in the Stone Ages with that. They have all these other tools. Like I won't list them all, and I don't know them all off the top of my head, but there's such a huge increase in scope and practice. And they've increased the numbers of paramedics in BC a lot. I don't know what the work environment's like. I do talk to them once in a while, and online. I'm still part of a couple of groups, but there's still problems. There's still issues. It's mainly management. Management doesn't support the paramedics. They don't support their mental health. I think some stations are still overworked. Their wages have increased dramatically since I left, which is good. They're getting paid what they should now. But yeah, that's about it. Yeah, I don't really know, unfortunately, because I haven't been in the trenches, we'll say, since I left. It's been about 4 years now. So
yeah.
I can't say directly, but it sounds like every service is similar. It doesn't matter where you go, because I met a paramedic that was advanced life support that used to work in the UK, and he worked there for, I forget how many years, 7-8 years. He came here. He said it's the same stuff, only different.
Yes.
So, it doesn't matter where you're from.
All right. Thank you for that. I'm glad I asked the question about the suspension, because I learned a lot just now. That's amazing. Well, you've forgotten more than most people know anyway, so there you go. Now let's talk about upcoming books. You've got your finger on another book that you're working on, or two?
Yeah, I'm kind of working on two. I was working primarily on my book, and I haven't really gave it a hard title yet, but I wrote a journal the whole time I was in the military. So I'm writing a book about essentially my memoirs of my time in the military. So I'm essentially transferring my journal to a computer. The problem is I wrote the journal kind of on a semi-daily basis, and that's not an exciting read to read. I woke up at 6 o'clock and we went and did physical training, PT for the morning, and we did that. So I have to somehow put that together into a different type of story pattern. I might actually use AI to give it a try to see if it will take that. See, people talk about writing books with AI. Well, I don't agree with that because AI wrote the book. So I don't want AI to change anything. I just want it to organize it for me. And for that, it can actually be very effective. So I might try and see an experiment with that. But then I took a little bit of a break from writing that. And I'm writing, most recently I've been writing about I did a trek to Everest Base Camp in 2018, and I kept a journal of my trek. And so I've been writing a book about that, about my journey. And then I want to add some tips for people if they do a trek, like I'll add a section in there about gear choices, preparation, things like that. But essentially it's just the journey going up there. That one I want to definitely include a lot of photographs.
Oh, wow.
The journey and the experiences and stuff. And again, I'm pretty much just took my journal and put it in writing, but now what I have to do is go back and expand on the journal entries, because as you can imagine, a journal entry, it won't cover a 12-hour part of the day, right? Like you can't write for 12 hours. No. It's sort of the high points. So I'm going to go back and then add to that. So that one that'll probably be released before the military one, based on, how I'm writing the military and transferring it. Because in the military, I think, I'll write about, say, BMQ or basic training. There'll be some time in my medic school, perhaps, when I got to my unit, my jump course, so I'll probably try to separate it into segments and then add some other elements as well. Exercises. We went on RV 92, which they don't even do anymore. Basically it's an exercise where all the soldiers in Canada come together and they do war games.
Oh, wow.
But it's very expensive. So I literally, I think 92 was the last time they did it. They haven't done it since. Not like that. Right. I was glad to be able to experience that. But they used to do it, I think, every 5 years or something. They used to do an RV. But cool. It ended up being a big party, too. That was another thing. But I don't know if people are allowed to drink in the military anymore. We used to. That was a common thing. But too many impaired drivers, I think they started cutting back. But at the end of the Friday, we had a small little mess in our unit, and you could buy some beer and stuff, and maybe have a beer, and then you'd end up going down to the junior ranks or whatever, someone's place, and next thing you know, you're at the local bar and everybody's being silly military drunk people. So right. But I think, I don't know if that culture's changed much. I can't say, but that's the way it was back in the day, in the 90s anyway.
So now what do you do for fun? What do you do for downtime? I know you're busy and your head's always working, and I can relate to that myself. But for fun, I mean, I've got some outlets, and I try to, for fitness, I just try to hit the gym. I've got some aches and pains, some arthritis and things, and some stuff from the military that are hanging on me. But I go to the gym about 3 or 4 times a week, depending. For fitness, I've got 2 motorcycles I ride. One's a touring bike that I can bring my fiance with me. She loves going on rides with me. And then I've got a sort of more of a single bike that I can use for local trips. It's a nice little. They're both have collectors, actually. They're both collector bikes. And the other one's it's a BMW. It was actually used in a James Bond movie. That one, the one I have, the same color pattern and everything. Yeah, it was a 1998 bike. And just a nice classic cruiser. And then I also own an airplane with 2 other people. It's an amphibian airplane, so we can land on water and airport. So I'm actually going flying tomorrow. I'm taking my flight instructor, that did my commercial with me, and I'm taking him on a flight because he just finished off some training, and I'm
I said, I promised him a flight in my plane. So I said, well, he's never really flown in a float plane before. So I said, let's go for a flight, have some fun,
Oh, nice.
and do that. So yeah, those are the sort of, I guess, we'll say the kind of the semi-adventurous things. I mean, I don't fly every day, obviously. It's expensive. I still have to pay into it. But they're fun escapes. You go for a day, you go out, you fly into a lake, maybe we'll light a fire, have some smokies. The only people that can access it are other, watercraft like boats or float planes. So some of the lakes we fly into, there's nobody, there's no roads.
No.
So yeah, so that's fun. And then I do. I wouldn't say necessarily enjoyment wise, but I volunteer for a museum, aviation museum locally. And then I also do a little bit of work with the flying club as far as that goes too. But yeah, so I think that's the sort of the main crux of it. I used to do a lot of hiking and stuff, but my knees are bad now and stuff. So I don't do that. I do a little bit of shooting when I get the urge. I used to do a fair bit and compete, but that's becoming a challenge with what the government's doing as well. So, but for now, I still can go and shoot my handguns and stuff at the range and do that. So, yeah. And I used to do a bit of golfing, but I'm not a golfer. But sometimes I'll just go to the driving range, put some headphones on, and smash some balls.
Right on.
It's very cathartic and therapeutic to do that sometimes. So,
right.
Yeah. So between that, it takes up,
yeah.
I've been really trying to. I don't read as much though, because I always find when I read, I've read a few books recently, but if I'm reading, I always feel guilty that I should be writing. I don't know if you find that.
Isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth?
But you need to be able to read too.
That's right.
I think you interviewed Stephen Beardwood about his book, and
oh yes,
yeah, I just read his book recently, and very, very powerful book.
Yes.
And I know Stephen personally, so it was interesting reading that. It's just it kind of, you relate actually when I can relate to some of the stuff he wrote about. That's how I things as well. So yeah, it wasn't an easy read, I wouldn't say, but
no.
important to get out there. So
yes,
so I haven't a chance to read a few books. So
cool. Well, actually, our good friend he bought two of these, mine.
Wonderful.
Stephen. And he and his daughter did it together. It's
awesome.
a 21-day process. So, day one, you do this, day two, you do that. And they did it together, and they were really excited about how that supported their relationship. So I'm going to put a plug in for Stephen too.
I still think you should probably maybe tap into, like Ingram Spark is the main distributor. So a lot of people will distribute books through Amazon, which is fine. But my publisher was actually published my paramedic book is in Victoria. They send the files to Ingram Spark, and then they distribute it globally. So that's my global distributor. Yeah. And you can set up your own account and everything. And you might want to think about that with that book, because rather than just, I would never want to isolate just on Amazon. As much as Amazon is a very popular platform to buy anything from, if you go through Ingram Spark, it opens up a very large market for you. Mm-hmm. And just to get more of your book out there, right? So that would be my suggestion anyway.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Well,
we've only got a couple of minutes left. Is that not like the fastest 45 minutes of the day?
It zips by. Well,
it zips by. And speaking of, I love to fly. I've always loved to fly. And we had a touring bike, a Honda Goldwing.
Oh, nice.
And we got on our bike in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and went across Canada to Washington, Seattle, Washington.
Well, that's a trip.
6,000-mile trip. We went all down through the Badlands and up to
wow.
Of course, we were a lot younger then and a lot thinner, so wouldn't do it now, but certainly happy that we did.
I don't know if my body would handle that. Actually, I find that even after an hour and a half, even in the comfy bike, I don't know. The body gets off, and I'm just like all achy and stuff. So, but yeah, good on you for doing it. That's cool. I didn't take up riding till after my first divorce. So I wasn't allowed to have a bike when I was married, apparently. So
no, my man had the same experience.
Yeah.
And when he met me, he said, I have my motorcycle license, but I never was really allowed to have a bike. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, well, if I got a bike, would you ride? And I said, I wasn't even allowed to talk to boys in high school who had a bike.
Yeah.
So bring it on. Bring
Yeah.
it on. And I got on the back of that thing and I just loved it.
Well, and it's interesting because my fiance doesn't ride. She likes being a passenger, and as well as she doesn't fly, but
Yeah.
she was a little bit afraid of heights and flying the first time we went up. But she goes on a lot of my flights. Like we go on
Yeah.
trips, like local trips, overnight trips sometimes, and things like that. And she just she's gotten over her inhibitions with those things. She
Yeah.
loves riding
Yeah.
now. I got her all the gear,
Great.
flying. She helps out with flying. Recording things. I'm trying to get her some lessons this summer, actually, some intro so she can land the plane in case something happens. But
Right.
we'll see how that goes. But so there's different avenues, right? And it's interesting how some people, I mean, I suppose when I was married, I probably could have got my bike license, but the amount of backlash I would have got about possibly dying. But what was interesting?
That's another show. That's another whole show.
I know we're finishing up here, but I mean,
Yeah,
at the time, I was a rescue diver in the Coast Guard, and I was doing penetration dives on submerged cars and vessels. So I was doing some of the most dangerous diving there was, and yet she's worried about me dying on a motorcycle. I'm like,
no,
I'm already doing a dangerous job sometimes. So
yeah.
Anyways, it was pretty funny the day I pulled up on my bike the first time after we were either divorced or separated. And she's like, "Oh, you bought a motorcycle, did you?" I'm like, "Yep."
First thing, probably the first thing you did.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I took my course that summer, actually. Yep, you got it.
All right. Well, just to remind our viewers, and first of all, Luciano, thank you so much for being willing to come back on the air with me. And I really appreciate you being here. And I recall good conversations, so this was wonderful.
Thank you.
And again, I'll just put up your book, Untold Stories of a Paramedic, available at Amazon, and keep us posted about the other books as well.
Yeah.
We're streaming live right now on Laurie Davis Facebook page and also on my YouTube channel, Laurie Davis Show Host. So you can go in there and share the show. And we always encourage our viewers to share the show, because there may be just one thing that Luciano might have said that could support another paramedic out there for sure. And also somebody who's in that non-shock proof ambulance on the way to the hospital, that it'll soon be over there. So, but it's been my pleasure to have you here, Luciano, and thank you so much. So bye for now, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.